Hello, my name is Paul Marchbanks, and this is Digging in the Dirt. Today I'll be paving the way for a viewing of Andrei Tarkovsky's 1972 film Solaris, the first cinematic adaptation of a novel published by Stanislaw Lem a decade earlier. As a kid, I associated science fiction with space travel, laser guns, and strange new species of organic life from other planets. Depending on the universe I inhabited on a given day, my imagination either traveled at light speed alongside Han Solo in the Millennium Falcon, or at warp 8 with James T. Kirk and his crew in the Enterprise NCC 1701. And then there was Glenn Larson's powerful, tragically short-lived, one-season-long Battlestar Galactica in 1978, which mandated travel through the stars as a necessity born of conflict with hostile robots. And its successor, Buck Rogers, which transported viewers into a brighter future 500 years distant. Given the swashbuckling which characterized all of these series, I assumed from a young age that sci-fi equaled speed, melodrama, and spectacle. Little did I know others felt quite differently. For mid-20th century science fiction writers like Isaac Asimov, Arthur C. Clarke, and Philip K. Dick, extravagant adventure proved unnecessary because the ideas they each brought to the table were exciting enough on their own. What if our understanding of mathematics allowed us to predict social change on a galactic level? Or an unoccupied alien vessel with unknown intent entered our solar system? Or technology advanced to the point where we could disguise our bodies to resemble someone else? High-speed chases, death-defying stunts, and high-casualty battlefields would have been distractions. The sort of distractions that admittedly inflate box office success, but which would significantly alter the composition of what I'm going to call contemplative sci-fi. This more cerebral branch of the genre tends to choose one or two possible technological advancements and extrapolate forwards in time towards their likely social, psychological, and spiritual ramifications. Those excited by the way handheld communicators in Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek anticipated the flip phone might be intrigued by the theoretical construct of the Ansible, introduced in the work of Ursula K. Le Guin in 1966. This communication device allows civilizations spread across a fictional universe to communicate instantaneously, potentially facilitating commerce, galactic politics, and interspecies anthropological inquiry. Works like The Left Hand of Darkness consider whether the presence of such technology would promote cooperation more than conflict, a question Orson Scott Card answers with a decided no 2 decades later in Ender's Game. Similar conundrums have been posed by our ability to map human DNA and potentially, one day, design the type of babies we want. Would prospective parents be as likely to request a certain hair color and bone structure as they would be to eliminate genetic disease? And might folk in the distant future begin to splice human and animal DNA? Would we ever try to clone a human being? What about increasingly capable artificial intelligence? Computers that not only beat us at chess and write papers for unscrupulous students, but one day become self-aware. Perhaps it's our unavoidable dependence on computers, but we can't seem to get enough of storylines that explore how AI could turn against its creators, provide viable companionship, or eventually become so autonomous that they seek to define themselves apart from humanity. Perhaps the biggest unanswered question is whether we will discover sentient life in another solar system before it discovers us. Everything from 1950s B horror films to family-friendly sentimental dramas to gritty urban warfare films in which we fight off aggressive invaders street by street explores how an encounter with alien life might fundamentally change our world. Such an advent might temporarily spark new forms of worship or provide us with newfangled romantic substitutes. Benevolent alien life could actually accelerate our own scientific progress with the gift of new technologies, or inadvertently do us harm in its efforts to create something inexplicable. All of this sounds pretty far-fetched, doesn't it? Well, so did the radio wristwatch of Dick Tracy in the 1930s, and until recently, the prospect of fusion energy. For years, fusion has been a tantalizing chimera in the movies, one promising a limitless, clean source of power that could either shrink the socioeconomic and national boundaries that fracture humanity, or lead to new, violent power struggles spearheaded by individuals more concerned with control than equality. Recent advances suggest that fusion will become a viable power source within decades. Scientists just recently generated more energy from a fusion reaction than was required to create that reaction. To my mind, the most stimulating science fiction concerns itself less with details about new technology or alien endgames than with what humans might learn about ourselves when encountering the great unknown. Such sci-fi adopts the standard motifs of science fiction, to be sure, but uses them as window dressing to frame an earnest examination of human nature. Above all else, this sort of science fiction constructs a mirror which provides ample opportunities for looking closely at our own most hidden motivations, our fears and desires, guilts and hopes, both any deep-seated shames and the prospect of a grace that might dissolve those shames. Some films, like Andrei Tarkovsky's Solaris, dial down the action to an incredibly slow tempo, creating a meditative experience, one that asks an audience to shelve any expectations for speed and efficiency and instead practice patience as a storyline unfolds at a snail's pace. Tarkovsky's privileging of long shots over close-ups, the elongation of single shots across a seemingly unbearable period of time, and the considerable attention given to nature combine to create either a mesmerizing or an infuriating experience for today's viewer, depending on your native temperament and willingness to temporarily decelerate. What happens when we step outside the communities that normally surround us and enter a vast expanse? It's a question we've been exploring for centuries, well before Russian cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin traveled into space in 1961. Henry David Thoreau, exhausted by the hordes of those he believed lead lives of quiet desperation, took to the woods for over 2 years. In his book Walden, he claims, "I never found the companion that was so companionable as solitude," and describes his 2+ years at Walden Pond as an attempt to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life and see if I could not learn what it had to teach. Thoreau's observations echo those of his British precursor William Wordsworth, who in the poem Tintern Abbey holds that the loneliness he ironically feels amidst the din of towns and cities falls away in the great outdoors. Surrounded by fields and hills and accompanied only by his sister, he experiences sensations sweet, felt in the blood and felt along the heart, which provide tranquil restoration. One of Wordsworth's fellow poets, however, suggests that we only gain from the solitude of nature what we bring to it. In his poem Dejection and Ode, a Rather dispirited Samuel Taylor Coleridge laments that the beauty of nature lacks the restorative power celebrated by Wordsworth, concluding, "I may not hope from outward forms to win the passion and the life whose fountains are within." We receive but what we give, he argues, and in our life alone does nature live. We cannot expect, in other words, that the moon upon which his narrator gazes, or any other celestial body seen from afar or up close, is going to grant us a healing balm that soothes all the hurts we bring before it. We receive but what we give. The natural world, defined in either planetary or interstellar terms, provides, more than anything else, an opportunity for introspection, a chance to reconsider the way we live and what motivates us. In Joseph Conrad's novel Nostromo, the brilliant and charismatic Martin Decoud discovers that he cannot bear separation from society, primarily because it leaves him alone with himself. Beached on a deserted island, he quickly unravels. After 3 days, he begins to doubt his individuality and loses belief in the reality of his actions, past and to come. Within 5 days, an immense melancholy descends upon him palpably. And 5 days after that, he is dead, a victim of depression. This kind of intensely personal, high-stakes encounter with hidden aspects of one's own identity interests Andrei Tarkovsky far more than theoretical musings on the specific nature of extraterrestrial life or technical details concerning how we might actually approach and surveil that life. Accordingly, the film Solaris spends little of its runtime panning across detailed miniatures or elaborate sets, and allows his characters to use only the barest minimum of pseudo-scientific jargon. Tarkovsky's camera lingers on slow-moving humans as they attempt to make sense of not only what their eyes and ears report, but what their memories and emotions recall. He provides his viewers a collage packed with cryptic images, philosophical musings, and a very messy journey towards self-knowledge that ends in a tonally ambiguous way. What is truly on display in Tarkovsky's film is the splayed open souls of his characters, particularly that of Chris, a psychologist convinced from the outset that what others report as actual phenomena are merely the products of delusion. This film takes the measure of Chris's empirical approach to understanding and finds it wanting. 30 years after the release of Tarkovsky's Solaris, a second adaptation of Stanislaw Lem's novel hit theaters, this time directed by American director Steven Soderbergh. The newer film opens with a voice from the past echoing in Chris's head as he sits alone in his apartment, then cuts to a tracking shot of our hero as he walks swiftly through the streets. This juxtaposition of slow-moving and fast-paced scenes is Soderbergh's answer to the uniformly plodding pace of Tarkovsky's film, an updated interpretation for a new century that replaces the questions left by the 1972 film with concrete answers. Some of these answers lie in more visual detail. The incorporation of complex sets and costumes, digital models of Chris's transport ship and the space station, and the beautiful light show hovering over Solaris's ocean. Other answers appear by way of a more extensive backstory for Chris, the elaboration of a key relationship, and a more neatly packaged ending. What do you think? Are greater speed, greater detail, and clearer character direction a necessity for today's filmgoer? Or should we reserve a space for the more measured pace of contemplative science fiction?